Have you ever wanted to run away, to disappear without a trace, to leave behind your job, your home, and even your friends and family? To reinvent yourself and start over somewhere new, where nobody knows you? The likelihood is you thought about it, but for no more than a few seconds before deciding it would be impossible, or at least extremely difficult. But for those living in Japan, disappearing is not only possible, it's actually pretty easy, and thousands of people do it every year. Some even enlist the help of specialist companies to aid them in their disappearance. Such companies are referred to as night movers. Those in Japan who choose to vanish are known as Johatsu, or evaporated people. And there's a wide range of reasons as to why they decide to leave everything and everyone they've ever known and live a life in the shadows. In an apartment in Shibuya, Tokyo, Akio is preparing to become one of Japan's many evaporated people. Before leaving the home he shares with his wife and their 3-year-old daughter, he packs a small suitcase with a few clothes and takes a wad of cash out of the savings jar he and his wife both contribute to. Unbeknownst to his wife, Akio has accumulated a substantial amount of debt over the last 6 months due to his secret gambling addiction. So Akio decided to quit his job and make arrangements to evaporate with the help of a night moving company. He leaves behind a mountain of debt, as well as his wife and daughter, without so much as a letter or phone call to explain why or where he's going. Akio was last seen by a neighbour entering the passenger side of a black Mercedes at 11:30 p.m. on the 17th of January 2022. Hiroto is one of many people in Japan that's in the business of helping people disappear into an administrative void. He's owned his successful night movers company for the past 10 years. He's helped thousands of men and women of all ages and from all walks of life to evaporate. All his services are executed with a great deal of discretion, and it's not unusual for him to help people move in the middle of the night in order to avoid being seen leaving. Hiroto not only helps his clients pack up their home, he helps them find a new place to live in a secret location. He helps them find work in their new city, redirects their mail, and even helps deal with any legal paperwork following their disappearance. And most importantly, he ensures his clients are unable to be found again once they've evaporated. And Hiroto relates well to his clients, as he himself left home in the middle of the night when he was just 20 years old. He didn't want to tell his parents that he'd dropped out of university, so instead he decided to disappear. He hasn't seen or spoken to any of his family members in more than 12 years. But not all those wanting to evaporate can afford to enlist the help of night movers, so instead they do it alone. And there are many easily accessible guides to help them. They bear titles such as The Complete Manual of Disappearance and Perfect Vanishing, Reset Your Life. And while most evaporated people change their name, some even go to the extent of changing their physical appearance to further their chances of never being found. On the morning of the 26th of July 2013, Himari waved goodbye to her husband as he drove away to work. She then frantically rushed around the house, filling up cardboard boxes with hers and her children's belongings. 3 days prior, she had made a call to Hiroto's night moving company and asked him to help her disappear, along with her 2 children. Himari had confided in Hiroto that her husband had subjected her to years of mental, verbal, and physical abuse. Hiroto agreed to help her. In just 3 short hours, the moving truck was packed to the roof with boxes containing all Himari's and her children's possessions. Then Himari, along with her 2 children and pet dog, left the house she'd shared with her abusive husband for the past 10 years, and drove away with no intention of ever returning. Once they arrived at their new apartment, Hiroto helped them unpack their belongings, before leaving them alone to enjoy their first night in their new home. Part of Hiroto's services also include handling any future paperwork relating to the divorce between Himari and her husband. But Sakura wasn't fleeing an abusive partner or feelings of shame. In 2014, she was on her way home from her job in a girls' bar in Shinjuku City when she noticed she was being followed by a man. And terrifyingly, this man's unwelcome presence then continued to burden Sakura on a regular basis. She changed her shift pattern at work, and at first this worked in throwing the man off her trail. But it wasn't long before he was back on her case, following her to and from work, as well as regularly standing outside her apartment building. Disturbingly, things progressed rather quickly, and within a month or so of first noticing the man, Sakura would arrive at work and hand-delivered notes were there waiting for her. On many occasions, notes were also hand-delivered to her apartment, and horrifyingly, the notes contained death threats. Sakura was understandably absolutely terrified, and swiftly made the decision to evaporate in order to escape her stalker and potentially save herself from his violent threats. And luckily, since evaporating, her stalker has been unable to locate her. But Sakura misses her family and friends and old life back in Shinjuku. However, she's afraid to return in case her stalker is still living in the area. But unlike most Johatsu, Sakura got in contact with her mother and sister within a few weeks of evaporating to let them know she was safe and well. The last time Yua saw her 28-year-old daughter Sarah was on the 7th of October 2015. That morning, Sarah said goodbye to her mother as usual, before leaving the apartment the pair shared and making her way to work. Sadly, 8 years later, Sarah still hasn't returned home. Yua regularly litters her neighbourhood and beyond with missing persons posters and uses social media to try and spread the word of Sarah's disappearance far and wide. She also contacted the police, but as Sarah took her passport, money, and several other personal possessions with her, it quickly became apparent that she had intentionally disappeared. The last time somebody contacted Yua with a potential sighting of Sarah was over 4 years ago. Yua has no idea why her daughter decided to evaporate, but she misses her desperately and hopes she will return home one day in the not too distant future. Until then, Yua lives in an almost constant state of anguish. But surely disappearing isn't as easy as packing a bag and paying night movers to help you relocate. Well, in reality in Japan, it really is that easy. There isn't really anything the police will do to assist in looking for a missing person unless it's suspected as a criminal case or suicide. And due to Japan's strict data protection laws, tracking down those that don't want to be found is practically impossible. If a person chooses not to register their address with City Hall, they are pretty much untraceable, even by the Japanese government. And access to CCTV is prohibited by members of the public, regardless of their reason for wanting to view it. And there is absolutely no chance of the bank giving any details of transactions to anyone, not even the police. For those that are determined to find their evaporated loved ones, the only option is to hire a private investigator, but those kind of services are costly and mostly not very successful. So where exactly are all of these evaporated people living? Well, some of them end up living in rural communities outside of the big cities. It's easy to live off-grid in such rural areas, as several of the neighbourhoods are managed by the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia. Many of the evaporated also get jobs through the Yakuza, for which they are paid in cash. And of course there are stories from all over the world of people leaving their old lives behind and starting a new life somewhere else without any explanation. But it's definitely a lot more common in Japan, and this is most likely because of the strict data protection laws, making it easier for people to stay hidden, but also because of the Japanese sekente culture. It creates a life of immense pressure for those living in Japan, which ultimately leads many people to feeling like failures, which results in people being tortured by shame, leaving many of Japan's people desperate to escape. And while there's no denying that helping domestic violence victims evaporate is nothing short of an essential business, those that evaporate for other reasons leave behind loved ones that are burdened with an incredible amount of unbearable uncertainty, not knowing why their loved one left, if they will ever return home, if they are happier now they've evaporated, if they are safe, or even if they're still alive.